Hello everybody, this is Travis Spangler. Today we're going to be presenting Email Gateway, and we're going to explain some new details and features and functions of the product that you just may not know about, and hopefully some items that you'll pick up from this meeting that will show us some ideas or different ways that you can implement some of the features, functions, or even the product itself in your organization. So we're excited to show you Email Gateway today. Just to summarize what Email Gateway is, it's an input module to your Quillix server system, and it's one of the many routes that we can get items into your system. And specifically with Email Gateway, what we do is we monitor email boxes, and I said that plural because we can monitor more than one. In fact, an unlimited amount based on what kind of infrastructure you have at your organization. And we're able to capture things like attachments or even the email body, and in the process use that information that we capture to provide us indexing information so that we can validate certain details and then possibly even convert and perform some image conversions or PDF conversions within the tool itself. So I think you're going to like what you see today, and hopefully you can think of different ways to use this in your organization. There are a number of new items as part of the product that we're going to share with you. The first is Auto Discover, and actually Auto Discover is not necessarily super new to the product, but many people are not necessarily aware that it exists in the product. There is an upcoming enhancement for those of you that are using the product, where we can provide a confirmation if there is an auto discover path change. So some of our corporate customers have been in a situation where they're not aware, but their exchange team has made some changes to their auto discover procedures and even paths. And what this will do is it will check it every time we first pull the email box and just provide you a warning if that's changed. But if you're not using auto discover, but it is enabled in your organization, it's definitely a fast route to get you to capturing your emails. We're going to be showing many new things today to you, including how we handle batch submittal errors. Or several different options when we're pulling emails, whether we want if there is an error during the batch submittal process, if we want it to just remain in the inbox, or if we want to move it, or if we want to move it to a completely separate folder than where our process mails go. So definitely keep an eye on that when you hear about it. There are considerable log improvements to the product, and that's not necessarily something we're going to share with you today, but if you are not updated on the latest Email Gateway, make sure you are, and also just make sure that you understand what the product's doing, and these logging improvements will make it much, much easier to manage the product. We have enhancements to the validation options for administration alerts, and Ed's going to share a little bit more with you when we go through the demo. Just kind of keep an eye on this though, because this once again is just providing you a path for easy administration. So we want you to understand as an administrator how easy and what's going on during your system. So if you receive an alert, or if there is a bad problem file, or if there's a validation rule that is violated, we want you to know what's going on. And so we've made some enhancements to the validation to make that obvious to you as an administrator. And lastly, here we have what we call OAuth support. And if you're not sure what OAuth support means, OAuth is simply a means of an accreditation so that we can authorize and authenticate certain users. Typically that's done through a group of tokens. You might hear of one called an access token, or what we also call as a refresh token, but it's a way that we pass tokens back and forth without needing to provide usernames and passwords. So OAuth support is something pretty new in the marketplace. Only certain things like Gmail, the popular ones, are using it today. In fact, Exchange eventually will probably go OAuth, but today it is not. So it's something that we're adding into the product up front just to make sure it is supported. But we'll describe a little bit more of that. So these are some of the new features that are in the product. We want you to keep your eye on them, especially when Ed is going through the demo today with you, to share these new things so that you're very, very aware of different ways you can use these. Let's talk a little bit of OAuth real quick, and I just wanted to share with you some things with how OAuth will work in the product. You'll see that now we have an OAuth enabled option in the product, and that check mark actually opens up another tab called OAuth. And what that will do is it will put together this OAuth tab, and this OAuth tab will have all of the information that you need to control your OAuth authentication. So you can see here things like client IDs and client secrets. These are certain tokens that need to get passed. And then there's also, refresh tokens and access tokens. So if you're not familiar with OAuth, maybe do some research and get familiar with what these mean. But if you are familiar, probably a lot of this means quite a bit to you and different ways that we can support it. Right now, we know for sure that Gmail is good. In fact, Gmail, by the way, if you are monitoring any Gmail accounts, is moving this route. So you're going to want to get your accounts migrated to the all OAuth standard. But there are other options and other email accounts that are going that route too. So just make sure you're fully aware of what OAuth means to you. We do want to describe in this webinar some best practices. And really the important part is that you need to know your environments. It's very important to understand things like what we're going to call seconds between cycles. And what this means is how often do you want to pull emails from your monitored mailbox? By default, it's 60, and maybe that's too soon, or maybe that's not enough for you. But typically, actually, 60 is pretty aggressive. And unless you're just constantly feeding emails and pulling emails, you can probably expand that to be beyond 60, but it's really your call, and you need to know your environments here. So make sure that you're setting these settings appropriately for you. We also have what we call max number of emails per poll, and that's actually defaulted here on 25. In the product, we just recently made a change so that will be a default of 5. We will only pull 5 emails per poll. By default, of course, you can control that. Once again, these are how many emails we're going to pull down in one cycle of Email Gateway. So typically, if you're using the 1 email per batch option, there's no reason to have this at such a high number, and it's really just probably overtaxing your system. So if you're using 1 email per batch, let's just maybe keep that at the new default of 5, or if you are using 25 today, consider moving that down. So those are some of the email polling features that we wanted you to be aware of that could provide some performance problems or resolutions for you. So definitely check your seconds between cycles and your max emails per poll. The next one, and I'm going to let Ed talk a little bit more about this, but I want you to understand that there is a difference between what we ignore and what we validate in the product. When we ignore an attachment in the Email Gateway, the product never even sees the attachment, okay? And we can do that based on either a file name or extensions. So the product will not even pull that in to process. Where when we validate, the product actually has pulled in attachments at that time, and now it's going to check certain extension, DPIs, phrases, extensions, etc. There are some new features here about what we can do with emails that are validated or have violated validation, and then Ed will share that with you a little bit here. Also, we have some detailed logging in the product. Detailed logging should only be used for times where you need to troubleshoot. We do not recommend that you run detailed logging on a production system at all times. Definitely only use detailed logging when it's necessary for you. So those are some of the best practices. Once again, just please know your environments. Make sure these settings are tuned to what you expect to happen. If you don't need to capture emails, maybe as aggressive as what the default settings are, please change those. Make those more appropriate to you so that you're not overtaxing your system when you don't need to be. But if you need to be more aggressive when you're pulling emails, you have the ability to do that as well. So let's dive in, and Ed's going to be sharing with you some of these details and going through the product here. So Ed, I'm going to make you presenter. And I don't hear you, Ed, so you might be muted still.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect. All right. So Travis definitely stole a little bit of my thunder there with some of the features that he showed, but we'll go over some of the details here. One of the things I want to talk about is some of the options that we have in our mailbox editor. So when you hear me say mailbox editor, this is the screen that I'm talking about right here. So we talked about batch submittal errors. What happens is when Quillix is very busy, you may encounter a problem where it logs a message something along the lines of failed to create the batch, failed to run the stored procedure, USP create batch, or something along those lines. And what we were finding is that there was problems with email gateway as we had to clear the batch and so on and so forth programmatically. And the long story short, what we did was we come up with some options so that you can either leave the message where it is and try again on the next cycle, move it to the same folder as the others, as indicated here, or we can provide the ability to move it to an exception folder, which in this case I just named it batch submit errors. And what that led us to was, hey, we don't have a way to create folders from email gateway within Exchange, such as our processed folder. So we added this button here so that you can create new folders. We've got refresh buttons here and here, but so you would create the folder here, and if you wanted to use it here, you simply refresh down here and you'll have it in this list. Let's see, Travis talked about OAuth and Gmail. Okay, discuss maximum. Okay, and then we had talked about max number of emails per cycle or per poll and how many seconds between cycles. As stated, 60 seconds per cycle is pretty aggressive. That's the same as hitting send and receive every minute. So some Exchange administrators might not like email gateway hammering the Exchange server every 60 seconds. Max number of emails per poll. We found that some customers had this set very high and were bringing in upwards of 50 emails at a time, and these emails may have 10 or 15 or upwards of 20 megabyte attachments. So when you grab all those emails and load those into memory, that's going to use quite a bit of memory, and we were finding that it was causing system problems just due to using up all the available memory grabbing email. So that's where we came to the conclusion that we just want to recommend everybody reduce the number of emails per poll, and we'll be defaulting it to 5 as well. As far as performance goes, chances are you are not going to ingest and process 25 emails every 60 seconds. Usually there's other steps in process that eat up CPU time that would have email gateway submitting more messages before the original first 25 were submitted. So it goes back to with reduced amounts of per poll and increased cycle timing. We're just finding stability improvements across the board, and we're just making a recommendation. Okay. One of the neat things that we've done is that email gateway, it tends to get easily change settings here and there. People make changes and forget or don't realize that they've changed something at all. So what email gateway does is we've added a little note here to show you when the last time the configuration was saved. The configuration is saved when you click OK. We are also creating a backup of the configuration each time you save email gateway. So backing up the configuration is no different than exporting your configuration here, but we are saving it to our installation directory. So let me go out here. Sorry. So within email gateway, you'll see this folder backup, and you can see that we've got lots of different files in here. You can see that I've been working on this for quite a while here. So we also have some cleanup options behind this. So if you obviously a real world environment's not going to be working in email gateway as often as I am here, but just to give you an idea, we do clean these up in the background, and that too, however many are maintained, is also configurable. So the automatic backup's nice. Let's say something happens, somebody changes something, you don't realize somebody changed it, you've got your configuration out there, you can always go back to the previous configuration. Okay, one of the things I want to point out is sometimes we get a question of email gateway doesn't see my batch profile. Email gateway will only show you in this list batch profiles that are added here. So you can see on my server that I've only got these two and email gateway sees them, but when we exit out of email gateway, you can see that I have 2 other batch profiles. Since those aren't in the server group, email gateway does not see them. So we'll go back into EG. I'll just demonstrate real quick. Now we see that. So that's just one of the things to point out that email gateway does. Documents are handled similarly. So if we were using the document or multiple documents per email, what this will allow you to, what this does here is only shows you available and activated document types. On my test system here, I only have 1 doc type, but if you had 5 doc types and only one of those 5 was activated, you're only going to see 1 in this list. This prevents config problems. Somebody would not have a batch profile in their server group and point email gateway at it, and then they'd get a bunch of errors. Okay, batch options. All right, one of the neat things that we have done lately is we've added some features to kind of improve the overall system performance by filtering out garbage. Emails come in from all over the world, from all over kinds of users, from all different accounts and different systems, blah, blah, blah. What we found is that emails come in with garbage. There'll be files with no extension on them, and that causes a problem later down the line in processing. Signature files are almost always, a hassle and oftentimes not desirable to have inside an email or a Quillix batch. So this way we can just filter out all of our linked resources with this, in this case, it's signature files, vCards, images, as in event UFCs, emails here. All of these would be considered linked resources, and this is filtered out by use of this linked resources option here. What this does is it keeps them from being files in the batch. So rather than having those PNGs and JPEGs added to the batch as pages, they're simply just ignored, and they are displayed in the email body, but they aren't individual files. And then not supported within rendition. This is files that aren't going to process or likely don't have any business being in a Quillix batch to begin with. This shows you the extension. Granted, these are universal files. These are not image files. So all image files are, of course, supported within rendition. These are the list of native, of universal files that rendition supports. And that way we just throw anything away right away up front that's going to cause a problem. We were seeing, I think, something called WMZ files that were hidden within emails, and I forget what it was. I forget what the file was. I did some research on it at the time, and we just figured out that it was just garbage that needed to be filtered. Let me get my outline here. So what we're doing here is we're ignoring attachments or omitting them from the batch. That means that we're just simply not adding them. That isn't, that's different from what we do on the validation tab, in the sense that, so what we are doing here is ignoring them. They're not added to the batch. Whereas on a validation tab, if it doesn't have the type of file specified here, it's going to be rejected and a batch will not be created from it. So let's say that you want to filter out all of your PNGs here, and you would add something like star dot, let me make sure I get it, .png. So that's going to filter all your PNG files. But let's say on the validation tab here you have PDF, okay? What that means is if a message comes in without a PDF attached, it's going to never create a batch within Quillix. It will simply be discarded. This is where we got into, hey, if we do that, if a batch fails validation, we need to know about it, because otherwise it looks like it just evaporated. So that's where we got into logging certain options here. So in this case, we said we logged a warning. So if somebody's frequently getting files in and they're being discarded from the batch, and maybe some particular file was important, that way we can go back and we can say, oh, hey, here it is in the audit log. It was logged with a warning. Here's the message that the mailbox that it was sent to, and that warning will also include the subject, so that we can kind of make it easy to find. We can at least figure it out. Logging them as an audit log warning makes it easy to find in Quillix, because you just set it to the filter by warnings and you'll see them all. All right. All right, so some of the other things that we've done that you may not be aware of is options here. Display indexes for the selected batch profile only. So when you select your batch profile here, this batch profile may have predefined indexes already set for it. So when you go in here, you can see that we're only going to see this one index that's defined for that batch profile. The other option here is to display all the indexes across the board for all the document types and everything. So it just kind of helps indexing. Remember that anytime you make any changes here, we've since lit this up bright red to remind you to save it, because it was getting missed in configuration at some point. Okay, validation, we talked a little bit. I'll go back and talk some more about that. So when we were talking about validating batches, we were saying that if it didn't have a PDF, this batch would simply never be created. What happened was it seemed like that email would have evaporated to the customer. So this way, we can add some options. So in this case, we can reply when the message does not meet the requirements. Okay, that you can see turns this tab on and off here. So you have an additional email configuration. So you can configure the rejection message. So you might say something like message failed validation. And then in your subject, you would say something like, please submit a PDF when emailing into Quillix. There's just a quick example. Move messages to the batch error folder as defined in the mailbox editor. So this is a great thing that you can use here. So you can say, oh, this message didn't come in, or this message came into the mailbox, but it didn't have a PDF. So rather than just simply throw it away and not have it anywhere, we can just move it to this batch error folder here that we've got on our mailbox editor. Oops. I need to change that back, and then I can say this. So you can move them to your batch submit error folder here. The other thing that we do is we can send an admin an email when a message fails validation. Now this is a fixed message. I forget the exact text of it. I should have dug one up. But this will just give you the ability to send an administrator or an administrative functional group mailbox an email saying that a batch didn't get created from a particular email. It just helps the administration side of managing the system and knowing why certain emails didn't create batches and so on and so forth. All right, let's see. Global. Let's talk about global for a bit. Granted, this says SMTP settings, but in the global settings, you can select an Exchange mailbox to use to send. Granted, you would have to be able to send from this mailbox Exchange side permission-wise. You can also configure SMTP. Travis talked about logging. One thing to mention, and I don't know if we talked about that, is the temp files. Email gateway, when it creates a batch, it first stages it into a temporary location on the service accounts app data temp folder. So in this case, on my server here, it's going to be users, and then it's Quillix service, and then it would be app data local. You can see there'll be e.g. temporary files. These get cleaned up on this schedule here. Reporting, this is just interfaces with either MuWave reports or will interface with Crystal reporting. Just gives you the ability to write certain values to the tables that are in the Quillix database. Audit log messaging, you can create your own custom audit log messaging by typing here or using built-in functions. You can pick these different functions from this list or create your own advanced script. You can rename attachments as they come in, so you might want to take and put some specific information into the attachments file name. You can control the email body, and you can control the actual attachments. In this case, when you leave it blank like this, it just maintains the original attachment name. Big feature that Email Gateway has that is often underused is scheduling. So we found that customers have periods of maintenance on, say, databases, and some of the things that his Email Gateways running and polling and trying to communicate or create batches within Quillix, you may find that connections are dropped to the database, or we talked about stored procedure errors that may show up in the log. This is just a cool way that you can just simply turn Email Gateway off. So it won't pull, there's no settings, or there's no manual effort involved. You simply configure your schedule and let it run. It won't pull the messages, and it won't pull the mailboxes and pull in messages during the defined time. Test tab gives you some troubleshooting and diagnostic options. You have a file that's failing to convert. Should you have a Email Gateway to PDF conversion license, you can use this to test your files conversion. Convert to images, same thing. Run manually. This is so that you can manually cause Email Gateway to pull the mailbox. Again, good for testing. Database connection, reset, and test. We found that there were some problems when customers were changing where the Quillix database connection was pointed. We had to recreate the connection to the database that Email Gateway has. This just gives you the ability to do that. You can test. It'll say successful. If you said reset, you can delete the registry key where it's encrypted. Long story short, just diagnostic stuff. And then good old licensing. All this does is tell you where your license is supposed to be, and it will tell you if it doesn't see it. And this is just kind of a nice way to say, hey, where's my license file supposed to go? Here's the exact path. I think we covered everything. Is there any questions that we have out there right now? Trying to look at the control panel here and see if we have anything in particular. Let's see.
I don't see any questions. If you have any questions, there's a raise hand feature on your control panel.
Travis, did I miss anything you can think of? Is I'm not clear enough? I think we got everything that we wanted to get in here. But yeah, if we got any questions, I'd be happy to field those questions.
Cool. Well, I think we're good. I'm not seeing any questions, but if you folks have any questions coming up, please contact us either through our support email, or you can always feel free to contact me if you have a curiosity about the product itself. Once again, just stay tuned with us. Our products are constantly changing, and we're adding features on a weekly basis to every product that we have. And feel free to contact us if you want to see a product, or if you're curious about a new build that you would like to implement at a customer, and we'd love to give you the latest product that we can. So thanks again for your time, and I think we're going to do it.
One thing I did want to point out, don't forget your product manuals here. I wrote this and put quite a bit of effort into making it beautiful and informative, so if you're not sure about some particular feature, I've tried to detail it well in there, and of course, you're very welcome to email our support mailbox if you have any questions on that. But remember, this is here, and this is very helpful. Lots of good information.
Cool. Thank you, Ed. Thanks, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you on our next webinar. Have a great day.
Take care. Thank you.